This is Pod Populi, podcasts for the people.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the MAX Afterburner podcast, sponsored, powered, brought to you by the No Fallen Heroes universe. Man, what a difference a week or two makes. Hell, what a difference a night makes since my last podcast. Literally, the world has changed. The country maybe not has changed, but kind of the direction we were heading has changed. And I don't care where you fall on the political scale. Obviously, on this podcast and the No Fallen Heroes mission, I couldn't be more bullish on the future of healing our heroes at home. I want to start with an apology, man. I got to be honest with you. The past 4 years, I was pretty bearish. I was not in a good place. I mean, we were knocking out our mission of trying to heal our heroes, but the couple times I had flown to D.C., not to beat a dead horse, but I've told you the story about the one appropriator congressman who behind closed doors was just, we love what you're doing, Whiz, but you're going to have a problem with big pharma, alcohol, and tobacco folks. And I'm like, isn't that your fucking job? What do you mean I'm going to have a problem? And I got it wrong too, man, because I assumed Democrats, hippies and dudes wearing drug rugs and anti-government and, anti-war. I could not have been more wrong, man, especially based on the FDA advisory panel. The Democrats are the ones who are in bed with big pharma and alcohol and tobacco. And here comes, the Republicans. Hell, we got Morgan Luttrell. We got all our SEALs. We got a lot of Republicans in Congress who are pro psychedelics. So whether it's RFK Jr. being nominated to HHS, literally on Veterans Day, he retweeted a clip from Joe Rogan talking about how veterans are most deserving of psychedelic assisted therapy. And he retweeted and said, yeah, Joe, our veterans need this. Man, brought a tear to my eye. I did not expect any of this stuff. And obviously Elon Musk, being pro psychedelics, Joe Rogan, and then JD Vance going on the Rogan podcast and being open to it. And it's interesting how a lot of people gave him shit for, he just heard about this issue. Well, first of all, that tells me that the guy's honest. And that tells me that we got a lot more to do, right? If JD Vance was like, hey man, this is news to me, then, but he sat there and he listened. So I'm apologetic because I just I was beaten down a little bit and now there's new hope. So that's me falling on my sword, but I'm continuing the tradition of lowering the GPA of the No Fallen Heroes podcast with another Army guy, Neil Markey. Neil, welcome aboard, my brother. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been long overdue.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely overdue. And I want to tell people your bio, and then I'm going to ask you a question because it almost sounds like our new Secretary of Defense's resume. So, folks, Neil, former Army Ranger captain, deployed to Iraq and then double pump over to Afghanistan, Colombia, MBA, McKinsey consultant, private equity company, and the co-founder of Beckley Retreats, folks. So did you know Pete? Was he a Ranger or just a regular Army dude?
He was regular Army. He wasn't in the regiment.
Okay. All right. So he wasn't a Ranger guy, but man, especially looking when you were stretching a couple minutes before we got on the air, I was noticing some of your tattoos. I'm like, man, he looks like Pete, and the Army captain. And
I don't have near that number of tattoos.
Yeah, he's pretty tatted up. But brother, welcome aboard, man. I'd love to, just start the podcast with, tell us about your journey, your military journey, and then how you found the medicine, and then we'll dig into what you do at Beckley.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I was in undergrad when September 11th happened. I was at University of Maryland. You could actually see the smoke from the Pentagon at the top of the football stadium.
Wow.
And so, that was a huge day in my life, like many. And then I started paying attention to the news and the lead up to the Iraq War, and then I joined ROTC and went in as a lieutenant. And I was actually an engineer officer, but I never spent a day in an engineer unit. I had an infantry platoon in Iraq, and then got a chance to go try out for the Rangers and went there and did 2 deployments to Afghanistan with them. And I was in the Rangers more on the support side of things and was an officer. So I was, quite fortunate relative to many, but it still left its marks, like without question. Now looking back, most of the guys had some level of PTSD. I mean, it was rough years for the regiment, and I would say that one of the toughest deployments I had was the one I didn't go on because I was back home doing the notifications, and we had 3 KIAs that.
Oh, wow.
One was a good friend of mine, and it's just like, it was rough, man.
Yeah.
And Leroy Petrie got the Medal of Honor when I was there. So there was, I was super proud to be part of the organization, and his locker was right next to mine. I mean, it was larger than life. But it definitely left some marks. And then I got out in 2012 and went to grad school, and by some measures was doing well professionally. I was at a good school, and I was showing up, but I was also going through a divorce and was isolating and was kind of cycling through SSRIs and anxiety medications trying to feel better. And none of that stuff worked. I'm sure you've had many people have similar tales on this podcast. And then the thing that really shifted stuff for me was I got introduced to meditation, and I'm still a huge believer in it. I think it's a big part of what we're trying to do here, and we should be teaching people these self-awareness practices if we're going to give them these experiences.
Amen.
So that was profound for me. I met this guy who ended up taking me under his wing and teaching me a lot of meditation and taking me on these long-form programs. And then I had a few psychedelic experiences in those years that were, in some ways almost an instant central nervous system reset. I feel like I unclenched my fists for the first time in a long time. And, it wasn't a one and done. You feel better for a while, and then you notice you kind of revert back to the old ways, and so you got to keep working at it. But I've been a big believer in kind of these alternative modalities for quite some time.
Bro, that's I love the fact that you said that, man.
Recording in progress.
Love the fact that you said that, because I have a similar journey. I found meditation first after a couple of my dark nights of the soul, lying on that bathroom floor type of thing. Somebody, first I found hot yoga, right? And, former Navy fighter pilot throwing on some yoga pants, I would have kicked my own ass, but found hot yoga. And, I fancied myself as a guy who, worked out, and I was in shape. And about 30 minutes into the 60-minute hot yoga session, I almost dropped dead of a heart attack. So found yoga, and then found meditation. I couldn't sit still for 30 seconds without my mind racing. And then once I discovered that I actually could, and I found some of that peace, it was fantastic. So you and I have a similar experience, the yoga to some meditation, and that eventually led to the medicines. I think that's a pretty good, for anybody listening or watching, not that, what we did exactly can fit for you, but that's a pretty good pre-medicine checklist. Yoga linking movement with breath work and being able to breathe through uncomfortableness, and then obviously the mindfulness is just incredible. Found some breath work. Let me ask you if you believe in this, because this is one of those sentences that old Whiz would laugh at, but new Whiz kind of agrees with. The medicine calls to you. Did the medicine call to you? Which medicines were they? And then talk us through some of your medicine experiences.
Yeah. I feel like they showed up right on time in some way. And, sometimes I'm the same way. It's like the 15-year ago Neil would be like, this guy's lost it. I guess I'm more open to these phenomena that we can't describe well, because, we take for granted the fact that we're on this rock spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, rotating around this big ball of fire, just like hurtling through space at maybe near the speed of light, like all the time. And it's like, there might be some stuff out there that we haven't fully pinned down yet that might be true, And so, my first kind of professional one was with mushrooms, and was in a, kind of doctor's office type setting with headphones and music and, a few grams. And that was big. I
Mm,
relived some stuff from my childhood. I, had some kind of experiences um, from from Iraq. I realized in that one that the one of the things that was kind of still in my central nervous system was the rockets coming in when we were sleeping. It was like the rockets when we were awake was fine. It was like we was ready, but when we were asleep and you get woke up by the explosions, man, it gets in there deep, and it just had been
mm,
affecting my ability to sleep deeply. And I saw that, super clear.
mm,
And that kind of went, it didn't permanently fully go away, but it certainly kind of, started to fade.
mhm,
And now it's completely gone.
mm,
And then, yeah, over the years, I've had lots of different experiences. I think the only one that I haven't tried, and I'd like to do it with Martine, um, is Ibogaine. But they've
yeah,
all been useful in some ways for me, and
mhm,
you know, they're all they've all been different but similar. It's a
mhm.
bit hard to explain in some ways.
Yeah, ibogaine. Man, I knew nothing about anything. Right, I knew zero, and ended up going to see Doc Martine down at the Mission Within with Marcus Luttrell and JT from Black Rifle, another team guy, and then an NFL player, Robert Gallery. And holy crap, man, that was just a nuke to the soul and the mind, and it saved and changed my life. So got back, and that's when I started the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. I saw something, when I was looking you up and doing my research. I love the fact that you, as a younger man, a curious mathematician. Let me get your take on this, because the more, as a fighter pilot, man of science and, physics and force equals mass, very analytical. But like you alluded to earlier, after sitting with these medicines and literally, man, on my Ibogaine, the first half was a tour. I got home and I told my wife, Susie, I'm like, I don't need to travel ever again. And she's like, why? I said, I saw everything. I mean, God, whatever word you choose to use, I got a tour of everything. It was kind of like, check this shit out, man. And you're a critical part of it, right? But I remember all of that stuff. And then getting home, man, now I'm watching stuff about the beginning of the universe and the Big Bang and everything. The more science I do, the closer I actually get to God. And it's completely opposite of a lot of folks who say, no, all this math and science proves that God doesn't exist. And I could not disagree more. Tell me your philosophy on that.
Yeah. I love what you said about, the more that you do, the closer you kind of get to God. I think that's true. And I think if you look at a lot of the scientific disciplines and you look back over time, like in physics, for instance, the real kind of leaders of those fields, guys like Einstein, they saw, if you go deep enough, you start to see there's something that's pretty wild, that's beyond explanation, and
Mm-hmm.
so, things have changed over time. So people have used different language and chosen their words carefully. But
Mm-hmm.
Einstein in his writing talks about this field, you know, um, he has many quotes where he says, one of my favorites is, you can either live your life as if nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle, and I think that's true too. So this is all either completely random and it's all luck,
Yeah.
or there's some intelligent design. You don't get to pick. You can't have. There's not an in between. And to me, if you look at the math, um, it can't be random. There's just no. It's
Right.
probability. It's you get to these hyper exponential numbers, and it's like you'd have to hit the lottery, every day for millions of years, like in a row. Like it's like that kind of stuff. And so
Right.
then you just get to this place where um, it requires some humility, but you're like, well, there's some things out there that, are pretty, miraculous, that are happening on like a moment to moment basis. And I would put you and me having a conversation in that, if you really break it down to what's happening in our bodies and the level of complexity. And
Mhm.
and then you add, I mentioned it earlier, but I always go back to this, the fact that we're like spinning on this earth at 1,000 miles an hour around the sun, which is all rotating around a galaxy. And if you add it all up, it looks like it's near the speed of light, maybe at the speed of light. I mean, there's this, it's insane, you know? So like, I just, I think like you said, if you go deep enough, you go into biology and you look at how complex things are and how much coordination there needs to be. If you go to astronomy and you look at, you know, how sensitive and how precise, you know, all these things need to be for there to actually allow life on Earth. We can't be even a little bit closer to the sun or a little bit further away. We can't rotate faster. It's just like, it's all so finely tuned.
Correct.
You know, that it's just, to me, it's obvious that there's something. And then so then what is it? Well, that's a good question to start asking. And
so we'll get into everything at Beckley, but in your experience, let me share my experience. I've helped, you know, bros and sisters with the medicine who could not be more agnostic or anti-God or everything, especially after what they've been through, right? I mean, what kind of God puts me in war and I'm doing some horrific things to another human? But I've had people come out on the other side of the medicine and look at me and go, not going to use the word God. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. There was something incredibly massive and loving and forgiving. I'm like, call it Steve. I don't, you know, choose a word, whatever one you want to call it. But there's not been one person we've helped with the medicine who hasn't come out that other side saying something, let alone God. How about your experience with all the folks you've been helping?
Yeah, I think that's a really common theme. And, you know, in some ways it's beyond words.
Yeah. Know? I had to learn that when I got back from my first medicine retreat. I had to look up this SAT word, ineffable. Not being able to put into words what you I feel like I fail often to explain what I experienced just because words, I don't have the vocabulary to, you know, communicate it.
Right. Yeah. It's, and I really love, there's some physicists that are out there today. There's one called, Nassim Haramein. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff. But it gets a little like, you know, heavy. But to me, we're gonna, you know, in our lifetimes be able to start understanding it more and measuring it more. We'll never fully get there because I think by definition, if you allow this thing to be infinite, then you're never gonna, you know, fully box it in, and that's okay too. Right. But I think we can continually improve our understanding. But from a physics perspective, I think it looks like, what I can understand, and I think I'm half decent at this stuff, is that there's a field, you know, and the field looks like it has a lot of energy in it, and it's structured, like there's a pattern to it, kind of a geometric structure, and then it has information in it. It has some memory or some understanding in it. Right. And I think that for many of the, you know, the human history, this is what people have been calling God or spirit or oneness. And I just love this Buddhist saying that's like, you know, don't confuse the finger pointing at the moon for the moon. You know, all of the traditions have said, look at that thing, but it's this ineffable thing that's bigger than we could ever kind of name or describe. But they were all intuiting into how to have a relationship with this thing or field. But yeah, I love looking at it from a math physics perspective. And I think if you take the time to try and understand it, it looks like there's something, you know, and then then go from there, you know?
Yeah. It's I love Dr. Stephen Meyer. He wrote a you know, Return of the God hypothesis. If you really want to nerd out on some of the stuff, because you nailed it, man. As he lays out, if we're like 1 degree off or 1 degree Celsius, or the Earth, it's everything's perfect. Right. And of course, the science guys will tell you, well, that's why. And then guys like you and I will say, well, there's something else. So yeah, check out Return of the God hypothesis. So talk to us about, you put the mask on yourself first, right? They tell you on an airliner, if we're going to lose pressurization, you got to put the mask on yourself first. You're not good to anybody else. After you put the mask on yourself and you started healing some of your stuff, tell us about your journey to, it sounds like you're in private equity and a bunch of other stuff, but you felt the pulling to put the ladder down to help others. So tell us how you got to found Beckley.
Yeah. So I was in grad school, learning how to take better care of myself, doing a lot of meditation programs. I started a business with my brother when I was a student, and so had a bit of an entrepreneurial couple years, and he still runs that business full time, I'm actually in it now. It's been 12 years, so it's cool to see it. And then I finished grad school, and I was loving meditation so much that I went and got a teacher's certification at Jefferson University. And so for a little bit of time, I was teaching meditation and working on this business with my brother. And so my life was just like, it was great, man. Had good community. I was living back in my hometown. I had purposeful, meaningful work. I had good practices, no alcohol. I mean, and then you do all these things, and man, life gets smooth. It's not without some challenge, but it's just more in sync. And then
it's a flow state.
It's more of a flow state. Yeah. And then I had been deferring this job offer with McKinsey Company, and I asked them for another deferral, and they were like, man, we're not going to be your permanent backup plan, buddy. Like, you're either coming now or never. And so I went there, and, I part of me loved it. It was, it's super stimulating, and I learned a lot, and really smart people. But if I'm honest, looking back, my mental health party started slipping a little bit. I wasn't taking as good a care of myself. It's a super stressful environment. And then I was there for a few years, did well by their metrics. I worked really hard. And then I got an offer to go to this boutique consultancy that was mostly all ex-McKinsey people, but they were doing private equity portfolio company restructurings. And that was tough work, man. I mean, I in some ways call it bare knuckle capitalism. It was very material driven. And at this point, I've kind of fallen off the wagon, and now I'm looking to like fill up my emptiness with material things. And that it doesn't work. It's like, that's just like not how the math works. It just makes you feel more empty. And then, so, the course
is never satisfied. It's hungry, man.
It's like a sugar diet, it's like, it's not nutritious. So you don't really get filled up, and it just leaves you wanting more. And it's a really dangerous path. And so, and I don't come from money. My family's like, middle class at best. And so I was way kind of out of alignment with my values, who I want to be, work I'm doing. And, after a few years there, again, I did very well professionally, but I was almost as bad as I was coming out of the service after having made so much progress. And I'm looking around at a lot of my peers, and a lot of them had really impressive educations and, came from, very well-to-do families. And I'm like, these guys have similar symptoms. They're not sleeping. They're out of shape. They're using alcohol. They're taking prescription drugs to get going in the morning and sleep at night. And I just got so fed up with it. I just left. And that was 4 years ago. And I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, but I got back to teaching meditation. And then I was in Mexico, and we had some friends down there, and was spending some time with the indigenous people, the Huichol, and psychedelic use is very more out in the open there. And then friends started coming down, and friends of friends, and then there was this kind of moment where I was like, well, why don't I do something in this world? Like, I love it, and I think it's needed. And so I started thinking about what that would look like. And then I had this, kind of surreal period of experience where I got connected with Amanda Fielding and the Beckley Foundation and her family. And the kind of synchronicity around our meet was just, it's just like, it just seemed right on time, and they wanted to do the work with heart. They wanted to do these long form programs that included skill building and, incorporating spirituality. And I mean, when you overlaid our plans, it was like a complete match, and how, and so we started, like 4 years ago, working on these programs. And now we run fully legal programs in Jamaica and the Netherlands using mushrooms. But we also, do a lot of skill building, because to me, it's really we want behavior change. We want people to build habits.
Dude, that's I love your story about the Wall Street stuff. You and you're my Navy spirit, or I'm sorry, Army spirit animal, because man, I did the same thing. I went to Wall Street, and I mean, these people wore golf, shoes to work to step all over each other, man. They'd push their own mother in front of a bus for $1. So, I went from a fighter squadron, because I was still flying Hornets in the reserves, where, you trusted the guys and gals in that organization with your life, where they weren't there long. Right. And going to Chicago, I mean, I couldn't trust somebody to watch my wallet for 5 minutes when I went to the head, and a loss of mission, right? As you alluded to, all the busy, you did good by their metrics, which of course was measured by putting in the hours, making a lot of money and shit like that. But, to a guy like you and I, who are driven by a mission or a purpose or a brotherhood of good people, man, I felt that's when I really was so far disconnected from who I truly was, man. I'd gone from flying fighters off the pointy end of a boat to, caring about the almighty dollar. And I get it, man, because, I saw a meme the other day that said, I'm praying to God to give me a shitload of money so I can really find out on my own that won't make me happy, right? I mean, I think intuitively people get it, right? But people want that problem. Give me as much money as possible so I can realize on my own that's not. And I get that, but man, I was so disconnected from source and my wife and my kids that, man, that's and to your point, meeting Amanda and everything in your life. Daniel Carcillo, one of the guys on one of my best friends.
I was just texting with Dan.
What a great human and a great American now, a great human being. He's like, Whiz, ain't no such thing as coincidence, as God winks, right? So every one of these is a God winks. There is no such thing as coincidences. Everything is happening and unfolding divinely as it's supposed to. So, man, I did the same transition you did. And 2020, or spring of 21, getting back from that retreat. That's why we started the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, to just put the ladder down, to give healing grants to vets, first responders, and their families, because their families serve too. We got Gold Star moms and spouses and family members, and obviously first responders, because a lot of first responders are also veterans. So we do all that stuff. Talk us through Jamaica, New Zealand. What do your retreats look like? What medicines do you use? What's the prep work? What's the integration? All that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's I think you said New Zealand, but it's the Netherlands.
Or Netherlands. I'm sorry, wrong N.
Netherlands one day.
So other side of the planet, Whiz.
we run what we kind of call more like integrative health programs. So when we set out to design a program, we looked at a lot of different disciplines. We looked at adult learning, we looked at habit change science, we looked at functional health. We looked at what was happening in the indigenous communities, right? And said, hey, well, there's some people that have been doing this stuff for thousands of years. Maybe they've learned something. And then, we looked at what was happening in the clinical environments and what the, research was saying. And so we kind of put a lot of those different disciplines together with a lot of help from different experts. And I'm pretty happy on what we've landed on. But it's a 5-night immersive experience in Jamaica or the Netherlands. It's the two places right now where it's fully legal. So it's completely above board. So we're a US-based company with operations there. And so it's legal from a US federal perspective and from a local jurisdiction perspective. And that just makes it easier. It's just like we're fully insured.
Exactly.
We know where the mushrooms are coming from. We test them. It's just no gray area of funny business. And we find that to be actually really important. And before the immersive experience, we have roughly a month-long digital preparation, but it's self-directed. And so people get access to our catalog of content. And in there, we're really working on the basic well-being practices. So lots of different, different meditation techniques, breathing techniques. If you want to learn about the research, you can learn about the research. If you want to learn more about the history of the indigenous use, there's modules on that. And so we're trying to give people exposure to, lots of different techniques and saying, hey, pick a few of these that you really like. I kind of always say meditation is really important. So that's gotta be on your list, but, to each their own. And then, all our programs are done in a group or cohort model because again, there will always be value in the one-on-one clinician individual model, but for us, a lot of the powers in the group, bringing human beings together and taking care of each other, and so you get to meet your cohort in a couple different Zoom sessions before the retreat, and you get to meet your facilitators, and you start to build some rapport. And so when we actually get to the immersive portion, people are like, hey, good to see you. And it's just like you can get into it way easier, and people have some of the basic skills needed to kind of get the most out of the experiences. And then on site, we always choose really beautiful locations that are kind of nature focused. So like places that'll be like, people are like, wow, we want people to be awe-inspired by the beauty of nature. We want it away from everything. There's not going to be a wedding next door or something like that. And then we're doing a lot of those practices that we taught in the prep, but we're doing them together. Meditation in the morning, time in nature, breath work sessions, some Western psychotherapy tools to kind of get the group sharing, being vulnerable, witnessing. And then, the highlight is probably the 2 psilocybin sessions, and we do those on day 2 and day 4. Those start in early afternoon. They generally last 5 to 6 hours. They're done in a group setting. So everyone has their own arrangement, a mat, pillows, blankets to get super comfy. We provide eye masks. Those are optional. And everybody gets their own custom amount. So that's a discussion between them and the senior facilitators, but it's within a predefined range. So sometimes, we're trying to find, we don't think that more is always better. There's this like window we're trying to get people in. And so there's some ways to kind of, get in to figure out what that is. But a lot of our guests are first timers. And so there's quite a bit of anxiety. And so generally, that you'd go a bit lighter in that first one and let them learn how to steer. The group dynamic really starts to gel. The trust is built with the facilitators. And then in that second one, people will go to more of like a full dose. And generally in dried gram mushroom weight, we're in that 1 to 4, sometimes 5 grams of mushrooms, but it's dependent on that discussion between the person and the senior facilitators. And then, beautiful food, like really, really thoughtful meals. Time in nature. In Jamaica, you can go to the beach, and the Netherlands, you go be in the forests, journal, hang out. There's some intentional kind of spaciousness, right? Because we're also getting people to just practice chilling the hell out. A lot of times we just connecting and just flowing and having conversations. And, I don't think you want to run these programs, you don't want them to be so tight that it's like a corporate offsite, like bang, 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 bang. You want to like let it flow a bit. And then, everyone goes home on day 6, and we start that same week with a 6-week digital follow-up. But again, it's, if you want to do a lot of the work, you can do a lot of the work. It's kind of self-directed. So, we try and give people options dependent on, their availability. But this is from from the position of like neuroplasticity, there's this window after these experiences. Yeah. And so we're really encouraging people to like, if nothing else, this is your opportunity to really lay in some new thought patterns and some new habits. And so like do the meditations and check on your buddies and see how they're doing. And so that's the kind of high level of the core program that we do.
Man, I love that. It sounds like a lot of thought and intention has gone behind this. And I love the fact that you said, hey, maybe we should talk to the indigenous folks. They might have some lessons learned about how we should be doing things. I love the buffet approach with how you said it. Like, hey, man, here it's all kind of laid out for you. Pick and choose on your own. That's a great idea. Love the individual, but also the group stuff, man. One of the reasons I'm convinced at least for now, the medicines are still legal at a federal level, is because you do recognize that we all are one. Man, I'm convinced these medicines are legal at a federal level because they have the ability to turn warriors into peacemakers. I've seen knuckle dragging killers on the other side of the medicine have absolutely zero interest in picking up a rock and bashing somebody's skull in. Now, coming to my home, or I'm not. There's reasons for that, but the reasons these medicines are illegal is because, as you know, man, in the 60s, 70s, take this rifle, go kill the yellow man. I don't want to kill the yellow man. I love the yellow man. Why? Well, they took these things, and I love everybody. Well, that's illegal, and here's your rifle, go kill people. So I love the fact that you kind of have that group setting, because I was, being a single seat fighter pilot, I'm a little kind of in my cocoon, man. But these medicines truly opened me up to the collective. I remember, man, however many hours into my ibogaine experience, and I remember just, lying on my back there, and it sounded like, Marcus and JT were in it. And I'm like, oh my God, these poor guys. And I remember wanting to try and help. And I will use the word God. God's like, Matthew, trust me. They're getting exactly what they need, son. We got some work to do. And I'm like, no, man, God, these guys just sound like, and God was really gentle and said, no, son, I trust me. I got them. They're getting exactly what they need. Let's go. And I'm like, all right. And I went with them, and man, that helped change my life too, because I was, we're always worried about helping, but when you give it up to God or the Holy Spirit and trust, that next morning I'm like, you guys all right? And they're like, never better. I said, it sounded like you were killing some demons last night. And they're like, yep. And they're all dead. I'm like, okay. So, I actually had to trust. So there is something about that collective. It's kind of bipolar. You're in your own experience, but you're also in a group experience. I remember, I'm glad you brought up eye shades, man. And to folks listening, you can do whatever you want. You're the pilot in command of your own aircraft, but man, I put those things on and it was great. JT is like, he was Mr. Eye Shades Up trying to, he's like, Whiz, I looked at my watch. Another helpful tip. Ditch the watch, man. Yeah. JT's like, I looked at my watch and then I counted to 1 trillion. And I looked at my watch again, and 2 minutes had gone by. I'm like, oh my God. And he was eye shades up. So trust me, when if you're thinking about doing this thing, off your eye shades, take the eye shades, man, and enjoy it, because it can be pretty bad. I'm glad that you hit on the 6 weeks of follow-up too. And Martine gave me this ratio, and almost never will I say he's wrong. But that next morning, I was healed, man. I'm like, I'm healed. I'm a new guy. And Martine looked at me. Doc said, Whiz, throttle back, buddy. He's like, 5%'s the medicine, 95%'s the integration. And the only reason I'm going to tell him he's wrong is because I'd say 1% was the medicine. 99% was me getting home. And to what you were hitting on, bro, was you got to develop new habits. There's that, whatever they call it, the golden window, or I think it might be 4 weeks for ibogaine, 3 or 4 weeks for psilocybin, where you're a clean piece of paper, man. And if you go back to your bullshit, you're probably going to have a tough time. But if you decide this is why we call it work, right? We say, you get home, man, you got work to do. And people are like, what's that mean by work? I'm like, it's work. And you also have, potentially, hopefully somebody loving or caring that you're going back to. It's going to be a little bit of work integrating with them as well. Because I remember Susie, I think it was a 6-hour debrief on the beach with Susie. And now that we're both on the other side of everything, I remember looking in her eyes a couple times with her just like, what the fuck? Who is this guy and what is he talking about? But it's definitely a lot of integration for the folks that we're coming home to as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and family members and stuff like that. So it sounds like you guys just have an incredibly mapped out way of doing things, and I'm looking forward to talking to y'all, because we need. And I love the fact, and I'm not gonna I will compliment you. I love the 100% legal type of stuff because it does suck having to play I got a secret type of thing here in the United States, right? Even if it's legal at a state level in Oregon and Colorado, don't know what the fuck you guys were doing up in Massachusetts, but not too happy with that. Or, you know, my brother Justin down in Austin doing the church thing type of stuff. Right. So it kind of sucks that we have to do this stuff, but I love the fact that you guys are like, hey man, we're 1,000% legal, above board. We know where we're sourcing our stuff. So that can give, you know, if anybody's a little leery about, you know, sneaking up the road in Florida, going to a church type of thing, it sounds like you all got this thing down to a science.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, we're still, you know, learning. But yeah, I think we've gotten to a point where we're getting really consistent, you know, positive outcomes and feedback. And I guess I should say too, you know, our programs are explicitly non-medicals. And so we don't diagnose or treat anything. And so we, unfortunately, right now, screen out severe indications. So if someone comes to us and they got like really severe stuff going on, we try and get them connected with a place that's more suited for kind of like clinical level indication. Ours is more for, you know, people that are doing okay, but want to do better and become more empathetic or improve cognitive function, or, you know, be more present with their kids. And so, I think it's important for folks that are exploring, you know, to try and find a place that's well suited for what their, you know, what their condition is or what they're looking to get out of it too. You know?
I love you said that because, man, I'm telling you, especially with RFK and, you know, a lot of the psychedelic stuff in the past couple of weeks, I'm starting to see the fear porn out there, like, oh, this stuff can be incredibly dangerous. I'm like, yes, for folks who it's not right for. So I'm glad you said that. I mean, we're looking at a sliver of the population that potentially, I'm not saying guaranteed, but potentially these medicines might exacerbate a condition. Right. So here's a wild concept. They don't do it. Don't use that as the excuse to tar 98% of the people who, to your point, maybe I do want to be a better father, husband, human, or I'm having a problem kicking the booze. So don't tar the whole industry. And I love the fact that Beckley's saying, hey, potentially you might have an issue with these medicines. Let's refer you to some place that might be able to help you. So maybe we can negate some of those so-called horror stories. Right. But I got to be honest with you, I've sent not using the word tough in a derogatory way. I've sent some tough cases Martine's way, and every once in a while it's a yes. It's like, no, well, actually based on XYZ. So don't let stuff completely shut you down, and don't listen to the fear porn online, man. It's so, I get it, and it's probably funded by pharma, but if you want to heal, you saying those words to the universe, somebody heard that. I believe God or the universe hears that. The day those words came out of my mouth in 2021, I think I'm going to do this, shit started changing, man. Yeah. It's started, and looking back on it, I know for a fact, you know, because I used to think people who journaled were weird. I became a guy who wrote in a journal, and I can look back on stuff like how things aligned to help me heal when I said that. So don't like self-select yourself out. If you want to heal, there's a way to do it, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's good to just, you know, we try and be open books, and we're not kind of, you know, going to oversell anything, just trying to give people the proper information. And, you know, are there risks? Yeah, there are some risks for some people. Do I think they can be well mitigated? Yes. And how about if you compare the risks to, I don't know, drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes or taking all different types of prescription drugs or oxycodone or, I don't know, climbing mountains. It's like we do all this kind of inherently risky stuff all the time. Correct. And for some reason, when it comes to psychedelics, it's like this boogeyman crazy thing. And I'm like, well, if you actually take the time to really look at the data and, you know, what's the actual incident rate and like who's it affect, then, you know, I encourage people to do that. But from my perspective, it's actually risk reward calculation is kind of like there's something really special here, you know, and not for everyone and not for everything, but for a lot of people, it's the best I've seen, you know, in terms of helping make some real positive change.
I'm so glad you said that, man, because I try and go on every retreat, but I don't make it on all of them. There's been a couple times I haven't made it on one. Always get a text. Whiz, I don't want to kill myself anymore. You can't put $1. You can't put the generational trauma associated with you can't even quantify. So, the boogeyman really upset me. I think it was unfortunately a lady passed away however many months ago in Costa Rica doing Iboga. Right. Rolling Stone did a big article and stuff like that. I'm like, the worst number that I've heard is like 30. Maybe people have incidents related to Iboga. But to your point, when you dig into it, these were people like 20 years ago showing up on heroin. So now clinics like the Mission Within drug and alcohol screen when you show up. So, and any death is obviously tragic, but folks, when you look at a quick Google search, 3,000 people die annually from aspirin. And you're going to give me shit about 30 people over a span of, I think it was 3 or 4 decades. But if it bleeds, it leads.
If they all, and those 30 people, many of them also had, like you said, extremely severe indications and probably may have died from their addiction. So it's just like, you got to look at it and peel it apart a little bit. It's,
the fear porn it sucks in the psychedelic space. But I am, the same thing. After action report in the Army or debriefing in the military, we want all that shit out. We want the dirty laundry seen so we can disinfect it, either knock it down or learn from it to improve our execution. So that's why I was a little, the MDMA, a little bit of a kick in the gut, man. I'm like, shine a light on some of the problems, man. Let's not hide anything, and that'll make the public trust us even more. So, I remember back in August, getting kicked in the gut with the MDMA thing. I said, you know what? This is a successful failure. Something good's going to come out of this, and then here we are. I think we got cut off in the beginning, but I went on a little bit of a rant about RFK being nominated to HHS, J.D. Vance on Rogan being pro-psychedelics. Doug Collins, Congressman Collins, Lieutenant Colonel Collins just got nominated today for the VA secretary. I know he's a big religious guy. Hell, he was a chaplain in the Air Force, and my phone was blowing up saying, I don't know if that's a good thing. And I'm like, just throttle back, man. Let's just, the guy seems open to it, right? Just because somebody's a Bible beater doesn't mean they're going to be anti-psychedelics. As a result of I lost my faith for decades, man. What type of God allows me to get molested as a kid, my sister to die from a drunk driver, and 16 buddies to lose in fighter aviation? I was the drugs, the alcohol. I could not have been more anti-God. And as a result of this medicine, I've never been closer to God, and not religious, spiritual. I think I'm a recovering Catholic, man. I did the altar boy thing and the whole 9 yards. So less religious, certainly more spiritual. So hopefully in DC, the swamp is going to change a little bit in the next 4 years. At least we're going to get probably a fair hearing on the merits of this stuff. Are you bullish about this stuff, or how you feeling about what's going on?
Yeah, I am. I'm bullish about it. And also just, I think that it's been kind of slowly brewing. There's the early adopters, it's like a whole movement. And I think it's like coming in a big way. I just recently have been speaking with lots of different therapists in the United States and in the UK, really to just let them know that we exist and we're potentially a safe option for if they have clients that are, that fit our programs. And I was speaking with a therapist a couple weeks ago, and I asked, how many of your current clients do you think are interested in this and would be a good fit? And she was like, probably like 60%. And I was like, well, what do you think that number was a year ago or a year and a half ago? And she said, probably 0. So it's just like,
wow.
It's in the ether. My dad's friends are in their 80s. They want to come down on programs. So, and they're kind of conservative leaning. So I just think it's coming in a big way, and now that we have, it sounds like an administration that is probably quite net positive on it, I think we're going to make some real progress.
Well, it's funny you say that, man, because I love me some hippies, but the first psychedelic revolution in this country was, the guys in the drug rugs and then, O'Leary, let's put it in the water. Probably a little, let's put it in the water, probably turn some people off. But if this quote next psychedelic renaissance is, we got Army Rangers, we got Navy fighter pilots, we got Navy SEALs. I mean, I love me some Morgan Luttrell. Congressman Luttrell saw his brother come back and said, all right, I'll go do this. And you quoting Congressman Luttrell, he's like, it was without a doubt the best and worst ass kicking I've ever had in my life. So the fact that we got, a Crenshaw, a Zink, all the SEALs in Congress and the Republican, I'm feeling good. I mean, I don't know how they don't listen to at least the Republican congressmen who are on board with this. And I heard Dan or Congressman Crenshaw medicine might be calling that young man, which I think would be, which would be great. So, Neil, how do if this resonated with anybody, like, man, I'd love to go on a retreat in Jamaica. Talk us how they apply, how they get in contact with you or your team. Let's talk through that.
Yeah, if you just Google Beckley Retreats, we come up. It's beckleyretreats.com. We have a social page, and then there's an application process. So you would fill out an application on our website. And then there's a call just to make sure it's a good fit. And we do one-on-one calls. So you can sign up for a one-on-one calls. We do twice weekly group Q&As. So, I mean, we're super accessible and easy to find. And no, it's a big decision. And, we really care. And, so we'll make time. It's not uncommon for us to have like a few calls with somebody to explain things, and then they want to have their wife come on the phone, or and that's all cool. We want people to feel really confident and know they're in good hands before they make a decision to come down. So we're here.
So Jamaica, Netherlands, any other expansion plans? Are you guys like where you're at? Because it does seem like everything's kind of growing right now.
Yeah, so there's some exciting things coming. Next year, I think we'll do some of our long form programs, but with ketamine.
Okay, cool.
So same structure, and like a reverence, not just, get high and then think it's going to fix.
Yeah.
So I think those are exciting. And then there's some stuff happening kind of in the Middle East that could be really exciting. And there's tons of, potential impact there, lots of healing. I mean, my God, So I think we're not in a hurry. But we want to help people get more access to this, and, in time, envision, centers all over the world. I think you've got to get it closer to people. I mean, we're really suboptimal right now to fly people to places to do this stuff. You need it closer to the communities, and then it can have this more regenerative economic model too.
Yeah. Well, I love you said that, man, because whether it's Eastern Europe or the Middle East, the world needs healing, man. Just enough with the wars. I have a couple buddies, one who did ibogaine with, big Ukraine, I think he's going to try and help a lot of their veterans or even their civilians. And even though Neil and I are both veterans folks, everybody deserves healing. And don't trauma grade or trauma shame yourself, because I did that. I'm like, I was a dude in air conditioning at 30,000 feet. I wasn't on the ground. My trauma isn't worthy. No. Stop that shit, man. Don't trauma grade or trauma shame yourself. If something's hurting you, something's hurting you, and you deserve to heal.
Yeah, that's super true. There's no benefit in comparing because it's all individual, and people can have tremendous pain in there, and some of it sometimes not even from our experience. It might even be our parents' stuff, and epigenetics is real. You'd have gotten laughed out of a medical school 20 years ago, and now we know it's very real. So if you feel called to it,
that stuff. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's in our code. I mean, they can see that now. Some of the studies they've done with mice around this stuff is like, my God.
I love Dr. Gabor Mate, who talks about all of this stuff and how we're carrying this. Again, another sentence, old Whiz would have given me a wedgie and stolen my lunch money if I heard me say, but the medicine can heal 3 generations. I'm telling you, Neil, when I experienced my father on the medicine. I couldn't remember the last time he had smiled since my sister died, and he was healed. And then the fact that my dad didn't know what the hell the word meditation meant, right? The fact that my children know that their dad, does yoga and meditates and did this medicine, I stopped it, man. I was the generational breaking of the chain, man. So I think you can heal three generations on the medicine, even though that was a sentence that I laughed at.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to come up with a book of Whizisms that, old Whiz would laugh at me at, but new Whiz,
We can collab on it.
Yeah. One more question, then we'll head on out, man. Somebody listening to this, whether it's a veteran or a civilian, give them a checklist. What would be your pre-Beckley? Let me get my flight plan together before I show up. What's the checklist for success for somebody coming to see you all?
As a veteran or just anyone?
And let's go veteran first, because I know we're kind of checklist-ish. How.
Well, Jesse Gould just came out with a good book.
I saw that. Love me some Jesse. To psychedelics.
I would get that. And then I think it's, I think you want to start some of this exploration and skill building. Meditation, I think, is just so foundational. And I think it's sometimes meditation gets put in this bucket of like, it's just another thing that maybe, I think you got to do it. I think it's the basic.
I think it's its own.
It's its own thing.
Yeah. If Neil and I didn't hit this, let me just give you a disclaimer. There are so many healing modalities, folks. Yoga, breath work, meditation, climbing a mountain in Nepal, walking on the beach. Neil and I were called to the medicine, so we're not hitting you in the head with one modality, but meditation might be it for you. There are people who do, these sit there for 6 hours and they have a similar experience than my 5-MeO DMT or my ibogaine. So I'm glad you said that, because if you find meditation, and remember, it's called a practice, it's not a do. Yeah. There's successful failures in meditation. The fact that if I can sit down and go, man, that sucked, I recognize that's, first of all, that's ego saying that sucked. And second of all, I had enough SA to go, dude, your mind's really full of chatter. That's a win, right? So I'm glad you alluded to that. Just meditation alone might help you.
Yeah. And I think nature matters. I think we're kind of chronically disconnected from nature. And so the more you can spend time in nature and barefoot on the ground and in the ocean and just kind of out of the hectic city environments, I think is good. And your central nervous system will respond to that. We know this from science. You look at the Japanese, they're doing nature bathing. It's just like go hang out in the woods and it's healthy. We need it. And that, just like take care of yourself, just like to be gentle on yourself, be mindful of what you put in your body, try and limit the alcohol and the stimulants and the processed junk, and be mindful about, what you're putting in your mind. It's just like kind of try and you want to go in a little bit more, clean if you can.
I love that, man. Especially the alcohol and that stuff. I mean, I know before sitting with the ibogaine, they said a week or 2 weeks at a minimum. And man, I'm not proud to say I was a drinker, and I don't know if you can be a good drinker, but I was a bad drinker, and I couldn't even look at alcohol up to 8 months after sitting with the medicine. It made me physically dry heave if I smelled it. Now if I choose to, I can have a glass of wine, but old me, a glass meant the bottle. And now that dude's dead. It destroyed alcohol in my life. So these medicines, folks, really have the potential in so many different areas of our lives to potentially heal stuff, which is just, it's absolutely incredible. And one more time, I'm going to remind you, there's no way in hell I expected to be on a podcast with a decorated Army Ranger talking about the medicines or healing, but that's the power of this planet, man. And I love the fact that you and I are spirit animals, bro, because I'm the guy that sits there at night and watches YouTube and these videos about the Big Bang and how nothing came from, and literally in the blink of an eye, a universe appeared, and that's just luck or something like that.
Right. Yeah, well, that either came from nothing or it came from something. Which one's more rational?
Exactly. And I'm telling you, man, I'm not going to guide your potential experience, but I'm telling you, I got a tour of all of this stuff. I'll share real quick what happened. I got into a do loop with God on the ibogaine, this big just white energy full of love and light. And of course, I'm an idiot. I'm like, are you God? And of course it was no answers. It was just energy answers. And I got the yes. And I was like, that's incredible, man. But who made you? And God was very loving and said, I have always been and I will always be. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. But who made you? That doesn't make sense. Very loving. I have always been. And I'm like, no, dude, you're not listening to me. I said, who made you? And God just gently lifted me up and I exploded into forever. I felt infinity, which was only that moment. There was only now. And that was infinity. And I was at peace. I got it. Now, even lying in bed at night, when I try and go back to that moment, it almost makes me tear up. I'm like, I can't fathom he has always been. But in that moment, God gave me the lift, felt it, came back. And he's like, you got it? I'm like, yeah, no, I got it. He's like, all right, let's go. Now let's do your instruction. I'll never forget that, bro. It was infinity, and it was only in that moment, and I was healed. I trusted him. So, folks, Neil Markey, decorated decorated Army Ranger. I think his bio got cut off in the beginning, man, but this guy is an incredible human being. Went into private equity and started Beckley Retreats. Went to Columbia, got his MBA. He's definitely an underachiever. Went to McKinsey and did the whole things, but clearly the universe has dropped this guy exactly where he's supposed to be, and he's dropped him into my life. We have a call actually after this podcast to figure out how the No Fallen Heroes Foundation can get some of our heroes healed down there in Jamaica or the Netherlands, not New Zealand. I got that one wrong. But Neil, I'll see you in a little bit, my brother.
Yeah,
I look forward.
What a pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you. I look forward to noodling the origins of the universe, and I look forward to healing our heroes together, my friend. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, God bless, man. Thank you.
Awesome.
See you soon, brother.
You got it. All right, folks, it's a new world, man. Whether you, quote, won or lost last week, if you look at it as winning or losing, that's probably not the way to look at it. We're one team, one fight, man. I don't care what your political beliefs are. I love you, and I mean that from my core, man. We are, to Neil and I talking, we are the same piece of cosmic stardust that appeared instantly, and we're actually going to go back to that. So it doesn't matter your political views, man. It's time to heal our heroes at home. Have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste. And basi basi. Whiz and Neil out.
Yeah.